Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We will give a minute or so to let everybody join. So thank you for making the time on your Tuesday. How are you, James? How you doing today?
Yeah, very well today. Thank you, Stu. Thanks for having us along. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Awesome. Can see a number of people joining. So this is a exclusive event for private equity funds, operating partners, heads of value creation that we are running. And we've got a number of conversations in the pipeline that we're really excited to continue to invite you along to. I'll start by sharing my screen. If you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat function at the side. We're absolutely delighted to be meeting with you all today. So just a very quick intro to James and myself. We are two of the three co-founders of OrbitalX. We're based in London, and we have been obsessing over how to solve pipeline challenges specifically for PE-backed organizations over the last few years. And we've been fortunate to work with some of the largest PE funds across the globe with billions in AUM. And we've taken a lot of those learnings, a lot of those insights, and we've packaged it up to start allowing other heads of value creation, operating partners, investment managers to really start to see and understand what you can do to solve the pipeline challenge that a number of businesses face, especially with everything that's going on with AI right now. So what is it that we're seeing? I think ultimately most teams and most private equity funds we meet are typically working with leaner teams where there's tighter budgets. But the irony is that there's higher growth expectations, and that's around profitability, EBITDA, and really thinking about with all of this growth of AI native businesses that are trying to win market share from perhaps some of the more robust and more mature businesses. How do we ensure that the growth that we deliver upon as a business or as a fund is as strong as possible? And what typically we walk into when we're working with clients is that often when teams are maybe a little bit inflated, then one of the decisions that's made by the business or the fund is to actually reduce some of that headcount, remove some of the marketing headcount that exists. And what happens is you have a very short-term impact on profitability, but what we see is it's either 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months later that the pipeline impact is really severe. And really what we want to talk to everybody today about is how we've seen systems, AI, agents solving some of those problems to make sure that you're actually delivering upon the numbers that are set. And James, this is obviously something we talk about a lot. Is there anything you want to add there on that brief introduction?
The words that came to my mind, Stu, when listening to you walk through that is minimizing downside risk. We appreciate with all of the private equity groups that we work with that they do need to remove cost from portfolio businesses for a variety of different reasons. And the measures that we're going to walk through today is how you can minimize that downside impact on pipeline as a result of some of those tactics that you mentioned. So really looking forward to diving into it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the kind of key thing there, James, is that I think everybody knows within the PE fund that when you do reduce headcount, there's going to be consequences at some point. But there's been a lack of visibility and a lack of understanding of perhaps what's working in marketing, what are the competition doing, where should we invest more, where should we pull back? And that's something that we can certainly open some views on and share with those that are on the conversation. So one of the things that we often see is that within the private equity fund, they're looking at the portfolio and there's this challenge around pipeline creation. And sometimes there's a real view that sales do not have the right number of leads to hit their goal. Marketing needs to be producing more content and perhaps AI is not being used well enough. And often what we see is that these are pointed examples of where the problem is, but actually a lot of it is perhaps more kind of macro in what's going on. The thing that I think we typically recommend businesses and ultimately the funds to start looking at is around the ICP and the ideal customer profile that has been defined, perhaps during due diligence, perhaps during some point of the business growth, but it's not operational. James, give us a view of what that means when it's not operational. Like what would that mean in practice?
I think when I look at this page of information, where I start is that lean teams are under-resourced and move. Lean teams are under-supported, and then work backwards from there. It's like, what does it mean to have an under-supported lean team? Well, it means the foundations that they're operating on aren't as strong as they could and should be. And when we come to that first point around the ICP existing, but it's not operational, it's how ingrained that knowledge of the right ICP for the businesses is in everything that we do from a go-to-market perspective. Because when we take a close look at the ICP and we maybe do some backwards analysis of the customers that we keep, those that stay with us for the longest periods of time, those that go on to become customers that we can upsell into and renew into, we then have the opportunity to market out to those businesses as part of a machine. And what that means is every dollar that we win is actually worth considerably not more, because we know that it's coming from an ICP profile that does stay with us for a long time, does have a high close rate, and does have a high likelihood that they're going to expand and we're going to grow inside of those accounts. So often that we see a lot of that ICP knowledge disappear with maybe some of the headcount reduction, or in businesses that have previously been founder-led, maybe the ICP lives with the founder and then the highest performing salespeople that have the right instinct for it, but it's not ingrained in the fabric of go-to-market. Once that ICP profile is right, and we have a high degree of confidence that this is going to give us better close rates, longer term contracts, and then increases in value, that's where we can then start to plan systems that allow campaigns to happen consistently, single inputs with ultra high leverage outputs as a result. And then that's where we start to see this compounding nature of the growth, because it has a focus which is data backed for value creation.
Yeah. I think the practical example, we're working with one of the largest software companies in Europe, over a couple of billion in revenue. And what we worked with them on was taking their actual account and customer data, reverse engineering that to enrich with signals and insights to really start classifying what ICP most positively impacts NRR. Like, how do we protect the GRR number with a science-based view rather than just a subjective opinion that this is our ICP or not? And with that enrichment, you're able to then categorize what business we actually want to build demand around, to make sure that when we do deploy marketing budget to those accounts, that they're the ones that are going to stay for the longest, upsell the fastest, and actually not churn. And I think that's where the opportunity with ICP becoming properly operationalized within a business is incredibly exciting. Yeah. What this kind of feeds into is now with AI and the power of agents is that the leverage and the opportunity becomes really, really powerful. And what we see often within PE-backed businesses is that they have a real skill gap when it comes to AI and go-to-market. You're probably seeing more roles around something called go-to-market engineering, which simply put is, I guess, a modern way to think about RevOps. It's somebody that understands systems, automations, workflows, and ultimately how that's packaged up into a go-to-market motion. And what we're seeing is that when these components are integrated really, really well together, the impact is significant. And what that means is you're using AI in the right moment for either production, for analysis, for the agent workflows that they're super, super good at. But you need to have a human component to really understand and make sure that what's being produced is right. We then point all of our attention on the right accounts, which feeds back to that ICP point that was raised previously. And ultimately, we have to out-execute the competition. And I think often when you look at PE businesses, their marketing functions are perhaps slower, less modern, less velocity than some of the competitors that are coming in. And I would imagine, based on those that have signed up to this event, you're probably looking at your assets and then looking at some of the competition that are trying to win market share. And often when you review the velocity of marketing being produced, sometimes even by a smaller team, because they're maybe more AI native, they're actually winning more market share and they're out executing your asset, which is a huge risk for your business because we know that touch points now, James, to book a meeting have gone from previously about 4 years ago, it was 10 or 12 touch points. It's now 60, 70. And I think to close a deal, it's in the hundreds. That marketing velocity really, really matters and the quality of what's being produced as well. But yeah, is there anything you would add to that, James, just with your view from the PE customers that you support?
There's one constant theme that has occurred as a result of these AI systems being implemented, which is allowing teams to better analyze the data that they have on hand, make more high quality decisions. And it is that around the high quality decisions. We are privileged to work with some great businesses that have grown consistently over the years, and that they would always credit that growth to high quality decisions being made. Now, with the help of agents and this clarity on the data, on the ICP, and what action we should be taking next, more high quality decisions are being made faster. And it's as a result of that happening throughout the entire go-to-market organization that businesses are outperforming their competition. They are winning the right type of businesses, which is pushing those GRR metrics up further and further because they're winning businesses, like you said earlier, that don't churn. And they do increase in value to the organization. So it's more high quality decisions faster as a result of the technologies that are now available to these teams.
Yeah, love it. So let's break down the system that we've seen working really, really well over the last few months. I think as the models have improved, the capability of where AI and agents alongside some human input become way more high performing than ever before. Step one is something we've spoken about quite a lot. It's about the audience, making sure that your assets are focusing their energy on the right type of accounts. And this is not just some mythical PDF document that is a very subjective opinion from the sales leader or the marketing leader. Now with AI, you're able to ingest all of the data of your existing customers, your previous churn, your existing win rates, and really bring a scientific approach to who the ICP is and ultimately where we're trying to build demand. And that feeds into signals, which right now, if your assets are not leveraging signals, such as buying intent signals or where there's content engagement signals from external sources, that's a gap. And that's really foundational to nailing this repeatable system. Number two is storytelling. And I think this is really interesting because where AI is perhaps failing is that if everybody has access to the same models, everybody can end up sounding the same. And it's really important for these businesses and for your assets that they really invest and think about the stories that they want to be known for. And I think crucially, don't default to AI for that. And that's a place that we've overinvested in within the business, where we've got former journalists, we've got authors within the company that are bringing that storytelling component that I think B2C businesses do incredibly well, but in B2B, we're still lagging behind. The third one, James.
Sorry, Stu, I was just going to say on that storytelling piece, because there's a couple of concepts that we talk about that I think complement what you just mentioned a moment ago. Is we think about undeniably human. So how do you get thought leaders, how do you get genuinely educational and helpful content out to market that is then owned and attributed to the business that is ultimately creating it? When it comes to the top of that storytelling tree, always thinking just 3 simple rules that I learned a few years ago that I think is always helpful is when we're taking a message to market, can the audience visualize it? When they hear it, can they see a picture emerge in their mind? Can we prove it? Right. So can the business, with all of its past performance, prove that that is absolutely true and they are best placed to deliver that? And then the final piece is it only yours? Is it undeniably yours? Can nobody else say it because of the year's experience, the amount of data points tracked? And if you have those 3 factors, that is a really strong message, which is provable, lands, it's memorable, and it's repeatable. And then from there, once you have that nailed, we can then bring in these AI agents again to triangulate between who you are and what you do exceptionally well, what your audience is talking about, the signals that we're seeing, ultimately what we should be creating to legitimately help them and bring them closer to the business. And then who are the subject matter experts that we have access to, whether that's customers, partners, or experts within the business. And using the agents to triangulate those three things, storytelling becomes the machine. And all we're then doing is teeing up the experts to answer the right questions, to push out to this audience, to benefit them, engage them, and bring them closer to us.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think what word of warning for those that are here from a value creation standpoint is that you probably hear from the teams that you are around in your investments. Perhaps they've tried to use agents, perhaps they've not worked. And we've really seen this theme that internal teams are being quite anti-agent in what's possible. We can assure you from the many campaigns and businesses we've supported, over 100 software companies in the last 12 months with this specific need, that the agents are absolutely working. The issue that most internal teams had is that they've got a very singular view of what the tech stack should be in order to make these agents actually work. And a lot of teams just default to Claude or just to GPT. But really, like the capability of these agents is absolutely mind-blowing. And if you do want to see some examples of that from PE owned businesses, you can reach out to us. There'll be a place that you can click now and have that conversation with us, because we can give you that full view of how these are being used and where they're absolutely winning market share, and crucially where that's then allowing a lot of value to be created without having to solve campaign needs with humans. And that feeds in perfectly to point 4, which is around execution. We need to out-execute our competitors. And what you're seeing with agents is now giving us the ability to do that. And as long as you've got the right system to operationalize it, then you get the outcomes that you want, which is ultimately pipeline. It's more efficient growth. And you don't have to default to the mindset of, well, how do we open up this new market? Or we want to open up this new segment, or we've just acquired this new asset to be part of a roll-up model. Do we now need to go and hire 5 more marketers to build demand? Absolutely not. There's been a seismic shift now in what systems and agents are able to do to make sure that you can open up more markets or you can sell to a different segment without increasing headcount internally.
Mm.
And I think, James, this is probably a really good example of where it's worked. This was a TA Associates business company called Cylindo, where their CMO came in, and this was after the team had been cut from, I think, a fairly large team to a much smaller one, a much more lean one. And traditionally what would happen at that point is pipeline would be almost stopped because you don't have the people, you don't have the output, and that really impacts your ability to hit your sales numbers. This is one of our case studies where with that exact system that we just mentioned and we just showed you, we were able to deliver phenomenal results, both with the ICP, the audience, the campaign creation, the right use of agents at particular moments, but also the right use of humans at particular moments to deliver on some fantastic results where even a lean team and super lean team was able to outperform their competitors and continue to win market share and make sure that they actually had their highest performing set of quarters ever through the OrbitalX solution and their input as well. But that's obviously a kind of great example, James, where it all came together across those kind of key components.
Yeah, and if I was to summarize why these results were achieved, is again, those high quality decisions were being able to be made much faster. There was a lot less subjectivity around what we should be creating for this audience and much more objectivity around what's being talked about in the market, what these individuals are requesting and looking for. And ultimately we made decisions of what we should create and distribute much faster. And then it came down to the orchestration as well. There was a system in place that allowed us to go from idea to execution in a minimal amount of steps. And so what then became the variables that ran through that system was the data. How do we further refine the audience, finding the right accounts, finding the right individuals within the accounts? What did they want to ultimately receive and learn and benefit from? And then the story itself. So what we then created and delivered. And by pushing it through that system, touch points increased exponentially, even with the reduced amount of resource within the business, because there was less requirement to gather research. Agents took care of it. There was less requirement to integrate systems and make sure everything was working correctly, because agents took care of it. And now we can just really make sure that the right stuff is hitting the market. And these are the results that Cylindo was able to benefit from.
Yeah, I love it. So what we're going to go into in the final section is really around the blueprint. And I think crucially, the way that we've structured this for you all to take away is that it's a 90-day view. Because we know that there's pressure on immediate impact and where do we invest? What do we do with the team that we have? And really this blueprint is going to give you a really clear view of what can be achieved within what period of time. So the growth, repeatable growth target that everybody wants, the efficient growth, let us break it down into three sections. So step one is that diagnose and activate stage. This is where businesses and the PE funds ultimately need to understand the marketing effectiveness. What we typically see here is that marketing might be reporting on a metric that actually doesn't contribute to the overall performance of the sales and marketing function. For example, only focusing on MQLs, or actually the way that they classify the MQLs is not the same as the sales team. So that alignment is critical. In that first 30-day period, identifying the focused ICP accounts is absolutely key. And that's where we spoke earlier about taking the historical data and insights that you have and really making sure that you profile them correctly so that you know where you want to point your ICP energy and where you start to think about these opportunities to define the narrative around that ICP and ultimately start to build demand. Once you've done that and you've established that, and I think the thing I'd say about it is that, again, with agents, where you were previously only able to analyze a certain amount of accounts and contacts, now the opportunity is so much greater. The volume and the velocity is exponentially greater, that you can now go into the next 30 days with that clear plan around who you're trying to target, what opportunities exist on a campaign creation standpoint, and how do you start to expand. And James, one of the areas that we've seen that work really well is through the account-based marketing. That previously account-based marketing would require huge teams and huge investment and probably only a pocket of accounts out of your total addressable market to go for. Whereas right now we're deploying, when we talk about expanding here, agents to really help account-based marketing feel one-to-one, but you're doing this at a scale that previously was not possible before.
Yeah, I think any business with a sales motion has always in some way, shape or form been running account-based marketing, because they should know the companies that really should be their customers. Obviously, with the benefit of this type of analysis, we can really start to nail down the ones that are going to close sooner, stay for longer, and increase in value. But there's three types of account-based marketing. There's one-to-many. That's anywhere up to, let's say, 5,000 accounts that we ultimately want to get to know, and we want them to get to know us. There's then one-to-few, where you really start to carve out pockets of businesses. Let's say, for example, the top 25 life sciences businesses in the world. They're very closely coupled in terms of their characteristics. The story is going to remain remarkably consistent, and we can actually leverage case studies to build some weight inside of that type of campaign. And then there is one-to-one. And to your point, Stuart, with the benefit of of AI and how reliable and explainable that has now become, we can actually make a lot more touch points, a lot more landing pages, a lot more of that whole journey feel like it's been curated, not only to the account, but also to the individuals in that account. And so what we're seeing examples of is when we need to maybe split our targeting across the CFO and let's say, for example, let's say the CRO, actually let's lead with the financial impact with the CFO, and then let's lead with more of like the outcome-based story-led impact with the CRO, because they've got different types of emotional drivers. And it's that type of like curated nuance that's really starting to see results push into what ABM has always promised, but it's now being a lot more attainable at every level of B2B.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that point about, what's attainable and what's repeatable is that final section, which is around like, how do funds look at their assets in a kind of robust singular view when it comes to marketing. And this point about scaling and systemizing is like giving you the platform to compare performance across selected portfolio companies. And I'll share an example of that, where what we do with the agents on behalf of the funds we work with is we're able to take your assets or take your asset and their competitors and start to quantify the marketing effectiveness and efficiency through what we call the MPM report, the marketing per marketer report. And what this simply does is it takes the number of marketers you have in the business and it analyzes all of the content and the performance of what they are driving through particular channels. And what we do crucially is we do some analysis to make sure that we're comparing it and dividing the number of marketers that exist within the business so that we've got a better view in case one asset's got 10 marketers, the other one's only got one, so that it's a fair comparison. But what this allows you to see is the velocity of content being produced on the y-axis and crucially, the amount of engagement on the x-axis, which is where we can start to say that, for all of the content being produced, because it's really low quality, we're actually getting really bad engagement. So you'd be considered a quiet laggard. Whereas you can have a lot of posts per marketer. So you're actually producing a lot of posts, but you're still struggling for the engagement. Really where you want your assets to be is that they're high impact producers. They're producing a high number of pieces of content and they're driving a great amount of engagement. Because if that is the case, they will be winning market share. And what you can do for anybody that's on this call is you can put in your, again, there'll be a section here for you to sign up to, that we can run this for your portfolio. So you will have a view of who in your portfolio is the highest impact producers, who are the quiet laggards, who are in the content treadmill, so they're producing really low quality, low engagement content, but a high amount of it, or who perhaps are your low output stars. Who do you look at in the portfolio that you go, they don't do a ton, but when they do, it's really, really good. And only if we could scale that, we would be able to win way more new logos and absolutely smash the targets that are set by the private equity fund in that instance. But this is a really great tool available with the agents that we've built to give you that singular view so that ultimately the system becomes clear, because you can start to track it over time and suddenly see that when you made this investment into agentic workflows or agentic solutions with the right partner, that not only are we producing more content, we're doing more marketing, but the engagement is driving up as well, which is where you win market share, because you're driving more engagement on the website, more demo requests, and ultimately more ICP qualified pipeline. Is there anything that I missed there, James, just on that overall system?
No, I was nodding along, Stuart. That's exactly. But the way I think about that metric is around sort of like resource utilization. We know that there are some great examples of teams that are lean, that are doing an exceptional job of making the most of the systems that are available to them. And that metric demonstrates who those shining stars are, those sort of bright lights, and then what can be done better through some of the other teams that are there. And, it's presented in a way which makes it quite a methodical improvement plan to move those teams closer to what they really are capable of, so the business can start to realize the value that they should be getting back for that investment in go-to-market.
Yeah, 100%. We've had a question about how do we track the overall performance. So one of the integrations that we have in order to make that report as robust as possible is with tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs, which are allowing us to track certain web performance across these different investments or different businesses that exist across your competitors as well. And that allows us to pull in things like web performance, the amount of organic reach, how that's distributed across different tactics. And we do a lot of integration with LinkedIn as well, so that we've got as robust a view as possible. But certainly if you want to see a deeper example of it, please do sign up now. We will complete that diagnostic for you so that you can see it, and that report will be shared. And yeah, we would love to talk you through that as part of these conversations. Awesome. Well, look, thank you everybody for joining. Really enjoyed the conversation, James, and thank you to those that have joined live. Any final thoughts, James, that you want to share to everybody?
With one eye on the clock, Stuart, we are coming up to that 30-minute mark, so I won't take it any further. I just want to say a big thank you for everybody that's joined us today. We really appreciate the time that you've allowed us. This is a really important topic. It's something we obsess over every single day. And if there's ever any questions that we can answer or any help that we can provide, we're on hand. But yeah, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.